Welcome to part 1 of The Organization, Selections from the Gnostic Nag Hammadi Library. The Nag Hammadi Library is a collection of early Christian and Gnostic manuscripts, also called codices, that were discovered in 1945 near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi. The writings in these ancient books date back nearly 2,000 years. Their discovery and translation have helped scholars to re-evaluate early Christian history and the nature of Gnosticism, an approach that is emphasized in these texts. Gnostics believe that a divine spark exists within each person, through which a direct experience of God can be achieved. Today, the precious Nag Hammadi manuscript collection is housed in the Coptic Museum in Cairo, Egypt. We now invite you to join us for excerpts from the organization from the tripartite tractate in the Nag Hammadi Library. In Gnostic terms, the Aeon represents a level of divine perfection that came from God the Father and is without form. Within the creation of a physical realm, divinity can still be present but is no longer perfect. In this context, spiritual liberation involves repenting the mistakes of physical existence so that we may return to the formless divinity of the Aeon. Another concept in Gnostic teachings is Logos. Logos symbolizes the universal divine principle as expressed through physical form. One such representation of Logos in Gnostic scriptures is the Son of God, Lord Jesus Christ. The organization. It is fitting from the prayer which he made and the conversion which occurred because of it, that some should perish while others benefit, and still others be set apart. He first prepared the punishment of those who are disobedient, making use of a power of the One who appeared, the One from whom he received authority over all things, so as to be separate from him. He is the one who is below, and he also keeps himself apart from that which is exalted, until he prepares the organization of all those things which are external, and gives to each the place which is assigned to it. The Logos established himself at first, when he beautified the totalities as a basic principle and cause and ruler of the things which came to be, like the Father, the one who was the cause of the establishment, which was the first to exist after him. He created the pre-existent images which he brought forth in thanks and glorification. Then he beautified the place of those whom he had brought forth in glory, which is called paradise, and the enjoyment, and the joy full of sustenance, and the joy which pre-exist, and of every goodness which exists in the pleroma, the spiritual universe, as the abode of God and of the totality of the divine powers and emanations. It preserves the image. Then he beautified the kingdom, like a city filled with everything pleasing, which is brotherly love and the great generosity, which is filled with the Holy Spirits and the mighty powers which govern them, which the Logos produced and established in power. Then he beautified the place of the church, which assembles in this place, having the form of the church which exists in the eons, which glorifies the Father. After these he beautified the place of the faith and obedience, which arises from hope, which things the Logos received when the light appeared. Then he beautified the place of the disposition, which is prayer and supplication, which were followed by forgiveness and the word concerning the one who would appear. All the spiritual places are in spiritual power. They are separate from the beings of the thought, since the power is established in an image, which is that which separates the pleroma, the spiritual universe, as the abode of God and of the totality of the divine powers and emanations, from the Logos, while the power which is active in prophesying about the things which will be directs the beings of the thought which have come into being toward that which is pre-existent, and it does not permit them to mix with the things which have come into being through a vision of the things which are with him. The beings of the thought which is outside are humble. They preserve the representation of the pleromatic, especially because of the sharing in the names by which they are beautiful. The conversion is humble toward the beings of the thought, and the law, too, is humble toward them. The law of the judgment, which is the condemnation and the wrath. Also humble toward them is the power which separates those who fall below them, sends them far off, and does not allow them to spread out over the beings of the thought and the conversion, which power consists in fear and perplexity and forgetfulness and astonishment and ignorance, and the things which have come into being in the manner of a likeness through fantasy. And these things too, which were in fact lowly, are given the exalted names. There is no knowledge for those who have come forth from them with arrogance and lust for power and disobedience and falsehood. To each one he gave a name, since the two orders are in a name. Those belonging to the thought and those of the representation are called the right ones, and psychic, and the fiery ones, and the middle ones. Those who belong to the arrogant thought and those of the likeness are called the left, heilig, the dark ones, and the last. After the Logos established each one in his order, both the images and the representations and the likenesses, he kept the aeon of the images pure from all those who fight against it, since it is a place of joy. However, to those of the thought he revealed the thought which he had stripped from himself, desiring to draw them into a material union, for the sake of their system and dwelling place, and in order that they might also bring forth an impulse for diminution from their attraction to evil, so that they might not any more rejoice in the glory of the environment and be dissolved, but might rather see their sickness in which they suffer, so that they might beget love and continuous searching after the one who is able to heal them of the inferiority. Also over those who belong to the likeness, he set the word of beauty, so that he might bring them into a form. He also set over them the law of judgment. Again he set over them the powers which the roots had produced in their lust for power. He appointed them as rulers over them, so that, either by the support of the world which is beautiful, or by the threat of the law, or by the power of lust for power, the order might be preserved from those who have reduced it to evil, while the Logos is pleased with them, since they are useful for the organization.
I can't wait to be in a position to stop the harm of animals in the film industry and influence people into being healthier and more compassionate. Melanie Light, vegan.
Graceful viewers, we appreciate your kind presence for the organization's selections from the Nag Hammadi Library, Part 1 of 2 on Words of Wisdom.